I'm here to talk a bit about safety and the digital world. Of course, today everybody knows that as soon as you have a mobile phone, well, you're in business, you can communicate. So, as we know, people are now using these rather than talking directly. People are using these to read the newspaper, to listen to the news, to watch video, and to produce their own content. But using this, as powerful as it is for expressing yourself and for accessing information, there are issues of safety. Because although a phone is unlikely to explode in your hand, there are other kinds of things it can do, or a computer. And that's really what I want to talk about. Because what happens when people are using the internet, and especially to express themselves, those who are doing journalism tend to face particular opposition. And that's because journalism, whether you're a blogger or whether you're a professional journalist doing it, or whether you're just an academic doing journalism, journalism tends to attract some antagonism from people who don't like the information that you're distributing or your analysis, or both of it. Of course, if you're doing journalism, you should do verifiable information in the public interest. So journalism is not polemic, journalism is not poetry, journalism is not propaganda. But journalism, because journalism, when it lives up to its reputation, because it is about truth, or at least trying to tell the truth, and about informed analysis, because of that, a lot of people don't like to see journalism. And that's why, if you're using the internet to do journalism, you can find much opposition. And that can take at least three forms. One of them is you can actually get a kind of cyber attack. So when it comes to a website where you're putting up your information, the journalism that is being produced, the website can be bombarded. It's called a DDoS attack, which means a denial of service. So many bots, in other words, computer-generated attacks can come to try and visit your site that the site can freeze up and fall over. That's one kind of attack. Another kind of attack is hacking. And hacking is a kind of invasion of your information. Sometimes to put a virus in, sometimes to change and tweak the information to make it seem that the stuff that's being published by journalists is different to what actually they had done. And this has happened around the world. Now, the first kind of attack, it's damaging the property. The property is the product of a person doing journalism, or the product of the company or the media outlet that they work for. But an attack, like I mentioned, that collapses a website, that is an attack on property. The other kind of attack, which gets in and hacks and changes and steals, this is an invasion of privacy, and sometimes it's fraud because it's manipulating your information and presenting it as if it was something else. And then there's a third kind of attack. So you've got the first threat to safety that I've mentioned, which is the blocking of the service through hammering it with multiple millions of requests at the time. The second one, the hacking, the invasion. The third one is the threats. So this is content that comes to you when you're doing journalism, and it says, watch out, your family should watch out, we know where you live. If you carry on doing this, you will suffer consequences. This kind of threat, of course, is a threat to a person's life. It's a threat to the right to freedom of expression. It's illegal. In fact, all of this, of course, is illegal because these are illegal attacks on property, on privacy, on your right to integrity, and then an attack on your right to association, expression, and your right to life. And none of them should be left unchallenged. We know also what happens in many countries is that when attacks on journalists begin, either physical attacks or these kind of online attacks, if nothing happens, they can get worse and worse and worse. And we know that indeed, sometimes on the internet, people tend to lose their inhibitions. They say things on the internet they would never say face to face. And that's a problem. We need to try to get a more civil culture on the internet where people are more respectful. We need vibrant debate on the internet. We need criticism of journalism. We need people coming up and saying, these facts that you are presenting are not accurate, and so on and so forth. But that's different to actually giving threats to journalists online. So threats to journalists online need to be nipped in the bud. They need a strong rule of law that the rights that people have offline, your right to property, your right to privacy, your right to freedom of expression, these have to be respected online. And journalists in particular, because they're so visible, because they're doing journalism, they need the protection of their online integrity of their speech. So one last point to make is that women journalists get a special dose of attack online. And that's because the kind of attacks are not only because of what they are writing or saying or recording or distributing, but because they happen to be female. And unfortunately, there are people out there who just are against women. And as a result of that, they bombard women with sexual abuse also and sexual threats. And this is an especially problematic thing because, of course, it's a violation of the right to equality. It's a violation of the right to dignity. It's a violation of the right to reputation when you're told you're a whore, when you're threatened with rape. And this particular issue of safety needs strong protection from the judicial system, the law enforcement system, and indeed from civil society. It's very important that we do something to make sure that women who do journalism online, on the internet, are not victims of this kind of abuse. This kind of abuse intimidates people. It drives them out of doing journalism. It creates silence. And if women in particular are threatened online for doing journalism, and those who are doing it get away with impunity, guess what the effect is? The rest of the society looks at this and says, if a woman cannot be protected online for doing journalism, clearly women cannot be expected to be protected in real life for exercising freedom of speech or doing journalism anywhere. And so we can see that when you're talking about safety of journalism online, it's not only an online question, it's also about the danger of the spillover effects when online turns into real attacks, physical attacks. Of course, the psychological attacks are bad enough. The threats are intolerable. But what becomes even worse is that they can create a climate where not only people feel intimidated and scared and have their rights violated, but where, in fact, in physical world, there can be real aggression and violence and even killing. And this is why, again, the rule of law must apply to protect people using freedom of expression, and women in particular, who use that right of freedom of expression to do journalism, why they need protection in cyberspace.